boy. I keep clicking and nothing happens. Okay, there
There
it is.
you go.
Okay, thank you. Oh, there's Lynn, Roger Witherspoon. The gang's all here. Crystal Chancellor. All righty. Okay, we're up to 37. So that's good. Who's else in the waiting room? Elliot Francis, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe we should wait a couple more minutes then. People
Yeah. Yeah. Give it 2 more minutes.
yeah, okay.
We
Oh,
have
Dion is here too. I missed you. Yeah, and Cheryl Smith, yay, yay, yay. Ben Cooper, Olive Vassell, John Watson. Okay. And iPhone 61. Now, who was iPhone 61? Is that you, Jean?
Oh, yes, that would be me.
All right, very good. He's listed in our description as Jean-Francis Vari, DC musician and artist, and lead for the band Sahel, who performs songs of the African diaspora in 6 languages. And he's creator of the cultural organization Black Atlantic. So we're happy to hear that, see him. And he's here courtesy of Dira Tompkins, who should be joining us momentarily, I would think.
She may not actually, Richard.
Oh, she may not. Okay.
She had a little family occurrence.
Oh, okay.
So send
well,
me a
she
message.
can catch up on the recording. Mm-hmm. Okay. But we all love Dira. All who know Dira are happy to have known her.
I'm sure.
Indeed. She knows
Richard,
everything about the Black diaspora.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Sorry, was somebody saying something?
Hi. I didn't.
Oh, Cynthia.
Yes, it's Cynthia. Yeah. Robin.
You were breaking up a little bit.
And I put a message in the chat, which I will repeat. 14253 signed. And so it's about saving Black history. And you know, that executive order was ostensibly restoring truth and sanity to America's history. We don't think so. 5,000 signatures by tomorrow, which is a heavy lift, and to 10,000 before the end of the month, and to millions before the end of the summer. So we need you. A lot of information in the link, change.org/save Black.
Right. Okay, all right, we're gonna start here. 107. So, welcome to the Journal-isms Roundtable. My name is Richard Prince, and I write an online column called Journal-isms, that's journal-isms.com, on diversity issues in the news business. This roundtable is an extension of that. We started this roundtable in 1999 when a friend of ours was leaving to pursue a doctorate. He said, keep these going, and we have. We've met every month in various restaurants in Washington, D.C. until the COVID pandemic, when we switched to Zoom. Our participation multiplied, and we hope to have more roundtables that are hybrid if we can find willing hosts for us, meeting in person as well as having people attend via Zoom. We've had about 6 of those so far. We think of this as an online dinner party with the purpose to network and to learn. Some of the networking takes place in the chat room, so please feel free to make use of it, as Cynthia just has. Special welcome to those on Facebook. Please leave messages in the comments section if you want to reach us. All comments are on the record, and we ask everyone to be respectful of other people's time, so please be succinct and to the point. Our topic today is what do Blacks worldwide have in common and don't? And to start this off, we have John Yearwood, who is on the call already. John Yearwood and I interviewed Matthew Vari of Papua New Guinea. and he is digital director at South Pacific Post Ltd, and the former editor, that's the parent company of his former paper, which is the Post Courier in Papua New Guinea. So you can watch the entire interview, which is about an hour, a little over an hour, online. But for the time being, we're going to just show a few excerpts so you can get the flavor of what that question, how that question can be answered from his viewpoint out there in the South Pacific. So Jackie, take it away, please.
Okay, great.
We can always edit it later on.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And your picture, thanks for the new picture of the staff. It looks smaller than the other picture.
Yeah, yeah. Now the
And
other one
fewer
was
women.
yeah, yeah. The other one was when I was editing the newspaper. I was the editor of the newspaper.
Okay.
Okay. Awesome.
Go ahead. Now your questions, I guess.
Okay, Matthew, I wanted to get a start by having you briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little about your background, where you're from, your family roots, and how you identify culturally or ethnically.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Thanks, John. Yeah, my name is obviously Matthew Vari. I'm from Papua New Guinea. I've been in the mainstream industry in Papua New Guinea for around 13 years. In 2020, I was appointed the editor of the Post Courier, the youngest in the history of the paper. The paper Post Courier is the oldest masthead daily newspaper in the country, heading on 60 years now. So I was the youngest editor. After just 4 years with the organization, I was elevated from business editor to become the editor of the newspaper. I stayed in the position for 4 years, and I was shifted across to run the digital platforms because digital news age is the digital age has sort of been dropped on us here in Papua New Guinea within the last, 50 years, and we are just now getting into that phase, and it's sort of like really taken over a lot of things here in this country, and the way news is disseminated. We have a lot of issues in terms of misinformation, disinformation. So this was our way of getting into the space. I'm from Papua New Guinea, which has over 800 languages, the largest in the whole world. Papua New Guinea, over 800 languages. That consists of 800 individual tribes. And writing for all these sort of tribes is a very complicated thing and a very complicated process. You have lots of ways where people can define something that's being written. They can interpret it in so many ways. So you have the cultural context, but you also have the religious context too as well, which Christianity is a really big thing here. But there are so many denominations in this country. So despite the fact that Christianity is the #1 religion, there's so many segmentation within the religion as well. I'm from the lower part of the country, which is called the Southern region. I'm from the Central Province. I was born to a single mother, hardworking mother who took care of all 4 of us. We're all graduated from college. The firstborn was a journalist. My mom was a journalist, and I am also the lastborn journalist. There were 2 boys in between. One was an architect. We sadly lost him a few months ago. My other brother was the architect, and my other brother is an accountant who's a bank manager with one of our local commercial banks here. So yeah, that's pretty much us. We all had different dads. 2 have the same dad. 1 has another father from one Pacific country, and I'm from this end too as well in the Southern region. My dad is from there. So pretty interesting life. Not your normal Orthodox family, but we did make it through. And happy to be here to have this conversation with you guys. The dynamics of news and writing, we don't have a really strong publishing industry here in Papua New Guinea. So a lot of and I'm not a graduate of journalism. I only took 2 courses in journalism. I was a PhD literature and English communication major. I took it in university, in our major university here, the University of Papua New Guinea. And from that, I had to find an outlet, which was the only way was journalism, because if you don't have a strong publishing industry, you can write all the books you want, but who's going to back you up to put up, those sort of material out there for people to read? But there is still a really big gap and a lot of need of, writing and expressive writing, especially. But the news a media space has been an outlet for most of all of us, especially those in journalism school, but those of us also practicing in other disciplines like English communication and PNG literature as well. So yeah, that's pretty much a rough brief on that. I currently now am running our digital platforms, getting addicted to it, mind you. I was very skeptical at first, being a paper man, but you have to just move with how the world is moving into the next phase of the revolution of the digital age is really here now. Can't do anything about it. We just have to join it. And we've been having a lot of struggles with trying to fight against social media. So the only way is if you can't beat them, you join them. So I've been charged with this big change now from the history of the company now heading into this space. And so far, so good. I don't sleep well at night because I have to check all my stats every night. That's how you exist. Your stats are what keeps you employed.
I'm curious, looking at African Americans, are there any historical connections between the people of Papua New Guinea, PNG, and African Americans?
I'm smiling because everything we get in terms of the connections between us and African Americans is through the media and through movies, through everything. And most of the sitcoms that that are being produced and sent, from Madea to all the other little stuff that you guys do, Dave Chappelle and all the conversations, and even Trevor Noah, amazingly, from South Africa, you can pick up all the similarities. So if you talk about some of those names, and even like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, one of my all-time favorites, growing up with that, everything that's being said in there and everything about the connections between Aunt Vivian and Uncle Phil and all of that, it's all connected. We all love all those. That's why they're very successful here. We see a lot of ourselves in there. All the ups and downs, the problems within, our part of the, complexion spectrum. We share a lot, to be honest. It's more on a social level that I see the connection, John. More on a social level, and it's really strong, to be honest, because we all know there's a really big disconnect, and all the comedians use that conversation, from Aries Spears to everyone. They use that connection about how white people do this, that, and how black people will do this. That's all. And we all share that. We look at it and we laugh our heads off. And I think the comedy of what we do is the big connection we learn about our, friends in, our African American friends across the other side of the big blue ocean. Yeah, that's pretty much where we see it.
But anyway, to wrap this up, I want to just I'd like to ask you to summarize what your thoughts are now about the main topic, which is, what do people of African descent have in common, and where do they differ? Where are the differences from your point of view and from everything you've just told us?
Well, in a nutshell, just looking at everything that I've been exposed to so far, everything I've seen and learned about my people, and through the work I do as a journalist, we have to know everything about everything, everywhere, and when. And just seeing how the connections are. Like I told you both, our connections are our lives, how we live them, and the kind of cultures we've been exposed to. And like I said, while it sounds so simple and probably funny to some, but our comedians on both sides of both worlds are the main ones who tell us that, the quirks we have are the things that really connect us, to be honest. And the funny parts of our lives are the ones, because I remember interviewing one of our guys who's done well in a sort of like American football you have, but we have rugby league on this side. And he grew up in a village, and I asked him, what's one word that defines your life? And he was stuck. He couldn't even answer. So he told me, one word for me, you probably ask my wife, but she'll disagree with me, but my one word is hunger. He said,
Hunger.
Yeah. My connection is hunger. And, it's hunger not from the actual fact that you're hungry growing up without food, to the fact that you're hungry to try and prove yourself. You're hungry to try and beat the system. And you're hungry trying to achieve the best in life for your kids. And I think as Black people across in the Pacific, to the motherland, Africa, to the United States, I think we all share those same traits that we're just trying to be the best we can wherever we can. For those of us who are trying our best to do it. And I think the other thing we share all as people, Black people living across the world, is there are a big bunch of us who have also given up hope too as well. That they're just trying to pass through life and its existence. So I think the onus on anyone that's watching is we all need to lift our people up together. And that starts by educating the brother next to you or the sister next to you. And you educate them in what you can do, and how you can do it better. Because I think a more learned Black person is one better person to teach his son, his daughter, his tribe, his village. Because we're having those issues here where we're trying to build up a country and build up with so many Black people with so many differing views. And it's our challenge as we reach 50 years now in this nation called Papua New Guinea, that we're now questioning whether we should be together or we should be breaking apart. Because one part of our nation is already trying to break apart. So, John, the challenge is still there for us. And all the same challenges are there shared. And I feel what is happening in our Black American family and the African family. We're just doing it tough. And for those of us who are doing it well, we have sometimes we have the tendency not to try and help everyone around us because we're so caught up with trying to keep what we've achieved. And it doesn't work that way, to be honest. So in our own way, we influence whoever we can. And I think that's important. From
Very
me.
good. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm.
Is the country a good place for us to visit?
It is. As long as you know someone like me, you're fine. And then you come and you come and meet other journals, and the journal community is so welcoming. And because we're that small, everyone would want to talk to you and have a conversation with you. I'm also on the media council, so if you do come along, we can pull everyone together and we have that conversation through the entire industry level. Yeah. So
Excellent.
I wish we had this conversation 5-6 months ago. Actually, about 5 months ago. A few months ago, I was not too far away. I was in Fiji. I would have at least come on over to PNG
awesome.
for a couple of days.
Did you find any church like that?
You probably saw some familiar looking people, so
I did.
you're fine.
Yeah. And some familiar. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway,
it's great connection.
Thank you so much, Matthew. I really appreciate that you're doing this.
Yeah.
And of course,
So pleasure talking to you guys, and thank you so much. And I'm really interested to know what your group is all about now.
That's great. Okay. I have to say that of course, the conversation went on, and we talked about a lot of other things, including journalism, but we didn't have time to include that. But you can see it on the full version. I'll summarize that I asked the question, what is the difference between journalism in Papua New Guinea and journalism elsewhere, such as the United States? And he responded, he says, I'll give you a visual on that. So if you're in a press conference and there are 10 journalists sitting there and the prime minister is talking, only 1 or 2 journalists will be asking him questions. All 8 are just copying everything that's been said. So there are a couple of reasons for this. Number one is culture, the big man mentality. So if the leader is talking, everyone shuts up, listens and respects and everything. In our world of journalism, that's a no-no. You never do that. But only a few of us get there. The rest of everyone does. So we try to talk to the journalists, tell them you need to get out of your box. You need to get out of your culture and your mindset. And also, number 2 is colonialism. Yes, where the British were here and the Germans were here, colonialism. Also, the Australians, especially if they are here, they were taking us out. The structures were created, the master and, the boy. And then the classrooms were all set up that way. So in my learnings in university, the classroom structure is a representation of colonialism. So the teacher stands and talks, no one says anything. Don't even lift your hand up until you've been spoken to. In the press conference, sadly, it cascades into journalism as well. So as I said, that's on the fuller version, which you can watch. And the culture of the country, of course, influences how the journalists behave and what they're trying to do. All right, so we have some other people on our panel, and we have a last minute addition. Ebun Joseph, are you there? I just saw him sign in.
I am, yes.
Ah, very good, very good. Well, she is representing the group called Black and Irish, which is in Ireland. And in fact, recommended. And this was given to me as a present at the fundraiser we had at the end of June. And Legends, Trailblazers, and Everyday Heroes. And if some may remember, we had a Representative Dennis Brownlee of African American Irish people. They have it's called the African American Irish what is it called, Diaspora Collective or something like that. In any case, so he is here representing them, and we want to hear from him. We hear now about from her point of view. What is the answer to that question? What do Blacks worldwide have in common, and what don't they have in common? So you've got 3 minutes on the floor is yours for 3 minutes. She was a last minute addition, so she maybe have to think a little bit.
Sorry, I have to think. That's me. Yes, I can go, right?
Very good.
Yeah.
Are you there? Yes, you're on.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so that's for me, right? Okay, well, I think that, sorry, I have to just speak off the top of my head.
That's fine.
My name is Ebun Joseph. I'm a lecturer in Ireland, here in Ireland, and the founder of the Institute of Anti-Racism and Black Studies. So I'm the special rapporteur on racial equity here in Ireland. I think that, I mean, I don't know if you were online, you would have seen that, over the weekend or well, last week, a Black Indian man, was attacked by 15 young children, between the ages of 13 and 15, so that's, I mean, that's something we've not seen, we know it's there, but we've not seen it to that level in Ireland. We've seen attacks on people seeking international protection here in Ireland. We've seen all of that, but to see, young children, so it has moved from parents to young children attacking people who appear different, who wear the label of on their skin. And so that was a major thing. So he was beaten, beaten, hit, caught, took off his trousers, all of that happened. And just, last week. And so we had a big protest in Ireland. We had a protest in front of the Department of Justice and all of that. And so when we talk about, people who are Black, we think that people who are Black have a bad experience in America. So in Ireland, we think, oh, that's American. That's in England. That's not in Ireland, But the truth is that on the ground here, all of the experiences that we have in America, in the UK, we have them here in Ireland, I always say that the difference with America and here is because you have data. The United States has data that shows it. A lot of places like, in Ireland, I'm here in Ireland. In a lot of places like here in Ireland, we don't keep a lot of those data. People don't report enough, and then we don't, our numbers are just not as many, Ireland is called the land of many laughs or many welcomes, and it is. Ireland is absolutely welcoming. So if you've never been to Ireland, do come and visit Ireland. If you've never been, if you've been, come again. So Ireland is a land of many welcomes. However, we who are Black here, we say that, being in Ireland is welcome, but it is selectively welcoming. So the darker your skin, the less welcoming you feel. And so all of those kind of impacts are there. But I think one of the key things that what I love most, though, about what I think we have in common is that Black people everywhere are resilient. And I know I'm beginning to hate the word resilience because it seems to be a permission to put excess pressure on people who are Black, but we are absolutely resilient, and that's a key selling point. It means that, you can't, I mean, we talk about the United States, we've gone from slavery to presidency. So, I mean, like, how do you do that? How does that happen? But I think only Black people can really, really do that. I was watching something online yesterday, and it was saying that everywhere where the parameters are clear, you know, when you're a Black person, you can rise to the top. So for example, in sports, the parameters are clear. Black people are at the top. In, you know, in music, the parameters are clear. Black people are at the top. And so here in Ireland as well, when you come to Ireland, despite the fact that I say, you know, that, you know, it's not so welcoming for people who are Black, but you can see the resilience, the drive, the push. You know, somebody said hunger, and that's one of the things I think we have in common everywhere. We're hungry. We're hungry to not be at the bottom. We're hungry to push. You know, we just keep on going, you know, like I always say, you can't keep a good girl down. And I'm that good girl you can't keep down. You know, the road keeps getting blocked here and there, like, oh, you can't do this, you can't be that. But I think Black people everywhere don't take the word you can't. You know, I think you can't has been removed. I don't know, but I think everywhere in the world, I see that the word can't has been removed from our dictionary. When they say you can't, something in us says, you know what, I'm just going to break this door down. And I think that that's something for me here in Ireland. I'm the special rapporteur on racial equity in Ireland. I started the first Black Studies module here in Ireland. You know, I wasn't born in Ireland. I've lived 23 years here, but we've broken barriers. We've broken down doors. And I think that that's what we keep doing. And I think, yeah, our resilience, we hate it, but it's a gift that we have. You just can't keep us down. When doors close, we break open windows, we go through the roof, but we bring our chairs to the meeting table. And I think that that's one key thing. You look at in Ireland now, you know, we have 6 people, 7 people actually of minority background in councillors, in politics, you know. I think 6 of them are Black African, you know. So, I mean, like, you know, so again, so you see that. So even the minorities who are in government in Ireland are of African descent. They are Black. You know, and so yes, and despite all of the fact, like, if I could bore you with all the horrible things happening to Black people here, but I won't, because I don't want you to be too discouraged about coming to Ireland, just in case you decide to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. Well, speaking of Europe, we're going to go on to Olive Vassell, and she is co-editor of this book here, Mapping Black Europe. So I would like Olive to take the floor for her 3 minutes and tell us what your answer is to the question: what do Blacks worldwide have in common, and what don't they have in common?
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Thanks for the invite. And I believe my co-writer on the book that Richard just raised is here, Epe from Paris. I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and about the book. It is called Mapping Black Europe, Monuments, Markers, Memories, and really was the first time that Black Europeans, people who were born and or raised or who had lived for a very long time in Europe, had gotten together to write their own first-hand account of what it is like to be a Black European in 8 European capital cities. So London, Rome, Paris, and Epe, who's on the call, can speak to that. Berlin.
By the way, let me interrupt. I forgot to say that everybody, please mute your phones if you have your phone open, because we don't want the feedback. Okay, yeah. Please. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So it's 8 European capital cities. London. We even went to. We even focused on Warsaw in Eastern Europe, which was really.
Oh, I read that chapter. My God.
was very interesting. Let me say that this work for me grew out of a natural curiosity, born and raised in London. And as a young child, I would go on school trips to France, to Paris, and I would see people who looked like me and had no idea who they were or why I couldn't understand what they were saying, and vice versa. So this has always been something that's been, you know, really at the core, the curiosity of where we are and who we are, especially in an environment where that wasn't really explained. So over the years, I've done work. This is where I met Epe around Black Europe, beginning in 2009, when the internet was just making it accessible for us to get information across borders and also translate that information, because of course we're multilingual. So the issues around being able to talk to each other were and are very, very strong. These days I focus on the Black UK, and now that we have a lot of voices and we talk to each other a lot more across Europe, so I focus on the UK and do work around that. I do teach in Washington, DC, but I spend all my scholarship is around Black UK, and I literally just came back on Monday from spending most of the summer in the UK so that I can really keep that feel of what is going on. And let me go to answer the question, because I could go on and on and on. I think what we have as Black people around the world, and something obviously I pinpointed in Europe, is this, the legacy of colonialism, and what that means in different contexts. And also this migration that we've all sort of migrated from various places, whether it's countries or from regions, as in America, to other parts of the country. Of course, we're always racialized. And I would like Epe to speak to that. That does not change from place to place. In Europe, there are different forms that it takes. For example, I know that in France, that has this so-called kind of colorblind concept. Black people are not counted, but it doesn't mean that they're not discriminated against. So for us, doing the work across Europe allowed us to compare what our situations were and how we were individually dealing with them and collectively dealing them, and then finding a way that we could collectively come together and kind of network, support, and move our social and political agendas forward. For example, the Black Lives Matter movement was really strong in every European country, and really in 2020, after George Floyd's murder, really kind of galvanized Black communities within countries and around Europe in particular. So there are areas there where we do really have a lot in common. The things that we don't have in common are things such as language, cultural histories, relationships with the colonizer, as I've just said. And I'd like perhaps if Epe could speak to that, particularly in France, where I think it's really strong. Our migration histories are slightly different. In the UK, we have the disputed, by the way, marker of the Windrush generation, but there's a lot of controversy around that because Black people have been in the UK since Roman times. Americans, African Americans, have been here since in number since the 1800s, post the American Revolution, when they settled here after fighting with the British against America. So we have our histories are very kind of complicated, and they are colonizer specific sometimes. So we're always trying to understand each other and kind of where we are. But a lot of progress, I mean, so much progress has been made in the last, I would say 15 to 20 years in terms of how we talk to each other. We have a conference every 2 years where we literally share what we're doing and our work and the issues that we are facing. Anyway, I don't want to go on too much, but I wanted to give you a snapshot and happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. We had some issues with the Facebook feed, so I've just given them the Zoom link. So we will have some people joining us shortly who are trying to get in from Zoom. Okay, our next 3-minute segment will go to Edna Liliana Valencia Murillo from Colombia. And we're very happy to have her on. She's been in the States a number of times, and she's written a book about her experiences about being a Black person in Colombia. And some of you who were here earlier in the year will remember we had a whole roundtable about relations between Black people and Latinos. Very good. Black people and Latinos, and we talked about what's going on in Latin America as well. And the headline on that column about that was something like mostly all Latinos have some African blood somewhere in their background. So take it away, Edna. So happy to see you.
Thank you, Richard, for this invitation. I'm so happy to be in this roundtable. And thank you to my friend, John Yearwood, also for the invitation. And yeah, I want to talk about my last book. This is my second book, and the name is La Diaspora Perdida, The Lost Diaspora. In this book, I speak about 10 different countries, the continents, of course, United States, Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Puerto Rico, in other countries that I don't remember right now, exactly Panama, for example. And what I'm trying to put under the light here in this book is how racism affects in all the different countries and all the different environments to all the generations of Black people, but also how racism is different between the different countries and contexts. It's not the same suffering racism in the United States than in Colombia. History of racism has not been the same in the United States than in Colombia. And that has consequences in the situations of Black people in our days. I just want to give you a specific example. Of course, in the United States, we had the Jim Crow system, laws, of course, that marked that segregation between Black and white population in the United States. And in my opinion, and I don't want to like romanticize the apartheid because I don't want to do that. But I think that's the reason also because in our days, Black people in the United States has universities like Howard, like Morgan State University, like Morehead University, has, for example, specific spaces or organizations like NABJ, and that kind of spaces that we don't have here in Colombia. And in my opinion, that's the result of the difference between the racism there and here, because here we didn't have the segregation like that. Here in Colombia, society tried to believe that there's not racism in Colombia, that this is a mixed country and there's no space for racism here. And that's why Black people, we have been in the same schools, in the same universities, in the same enterprises, just spending our money in the white pockets, just learning the same unfair story about slavery. So that's what I'm trying to say here. And that's only a compare between the United States and Colombia. But I'm continuing this book talking about Panama, Brazil, Ecuador. And the other topic about my book is how the Black heritage is still alive in the whole continent and has a lot of common aspects, but at the same time, it's very different between the different countries. So I think this is a very important topic to analyze, to highlight, and to write about, and to discuss about, like in this roundtable. In the case of Latin America, we are still struggling with the invisibilization. When I travel around the world, especially in Africa, I have been in 7 or 9 different countries of Africa. I used to hear that, of course, there's Black people in the United States, there's Black people in the Caribbean, there's Black people in Brazil, for example, but there's not a conscience about, there's also Black people in countries like Colombia, even like Peru or Bolivia. So we are still that part of the diaspora that doesn't exist enough. We, of course, exist, but we don't have that visibility. Of course, the Black movement in the United States has been an example to everybody around the world, but we also have resistant process that are very interesting here in Latin America. So that's speaking about general aspect, but speaking about journalism. In terms of journalism, I think we are still struggling with tokenism. In Colombia and in many different countries in Latin America, there's like a fashion aspect to have one Black anchor or one Black journalist just to appear that they are not racist, just to give a diversity image, but we are not still a strong voice inside our networks, inside our media. We are struggling to be, of course, and I consider myself a strong voice. But at the same time, I still feel that I'm there just to be the token, not because they really want to have the discussions that I want to put on the table. Not because they want really to talk about racism, and not only racism, about what Black people has been, or how our role in the construction of the country is still important, and we have to have presence in the different debates of the nation, you know. And I don't know how much time I have been spent, But I want to finish just putting light, for example, in the Vice President of Colombia, Francia Marquez. I don't know if you know, but I can guess that you know that here in Colombia, for the first time, we have a Black woman as a vice president, you know? And it's very strong to see how she's changing the image of the politics in Colombia. But at the same time, how she is proving one more time that it doesn't matter if you are in the power, at least an institutional power, doesn't matter if you are the vice president, doesn't matter if you have money or not, doesn't matter if you are doing a good work or not. At the end, she's still suffering oppression, she's still suffering racism inside the government of and she's part of it, you know? So I think that's a very good example to understand the situation of Black people in Latin America. We have the door to us is formally open, but it's really closed still. I think that's my statement to finish. The door to Black people in Latin America is formally open, but it's really close in our days. So yeah, I think of course there's many positive aspects that we can or we could discuss here, but I think there's a good abstract about the situation by my point of view.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think Lori Montenegro is here as well. She's here in Washington, D.C. as head of the bureau chief in Telemundo, and she can expand on what Edna was saying. So please take it away, Lori.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for this interview. I mean, for this participation invitation. John Yearwood, who has become a good friend and also, I would say, a good partner. Edna could have not said it better. A little challenging following Edna, who's such an eloquent speaker and has broken so many barriers. And I think I would pick up on what Edna is saying. I still think that one of the things that we have in common, and this is globally, is that a lot of times in many sectors of this planet that we're on, Black people continue to be, we find ourselves being still the first ones in the room. We are still the first ones in certain positions. And it's really a shame. Yes, the doors have opened in a lot of ways, but in other ways, they're still shut. And this is where I think I would want to begin. We are on top. Yes, we are on top in many ways. We're on top in the music industry and sports and stuff. But I still believe that we may be on top, but we are not in control. And it is, a lot of people are still struggling with allowing us to be in control. And I talk about the United States and the example of President Barack Obama. Even after he was elected, I was still a reporter covering the Hill, the White House, and everything here in Washington, D.C., State Department, Justice. And I would hear the comments. And yes, this was a nation that elected its first Black president, but in many ways, it was not prepared to allow a Black president to really govern the way that he may or should have been allowed to govern. It doesn't matter if you were in favor of his policies or not. The fact is, I feel, and because of what I heard and got firsthand, this nation was not really prepared for a first Black president. I think that worldwide, we are still in common, is that we are still trying to, if you want to use the words fight, the fact that they still want to define who we are. What's the way that we should dress? What's the way that we should speak? Define even, and at this age, Edna and I just came out of a conference where you would have thought that this topic is passé, but it's not. They're even trying to define us by our hair and how we should wear that hair. And the fact that in this day and age, still they're getting, not only women, but even men are still getting looks about how they wear their hair is something that I think we all have have in common. And the only thing that I would end with is that I think one of the sad things, and Edna alluded to this, is that as a global Black community, we really don't know the stories of each other's diaspora. There's still people who have no idea that there are Blacks in Cuba, or there are Black communities in Nicaragua, in Bluefields, in Honduras, in San Pedro Sula, in Costa Rica, in Limón, in Panama, in Colón, in Colombia, Cartagena de India. There's just, and we still, and we don't know the history of Blacks in Europe, or, you know, I just learned about Ireland. And I think that is something that we as a community, as journalists, maybe need to tackle more, and find those outlets that are willing to tell that story so that we can become interconnected. And I would say that the more knowledge that we have about each other's diaspora, the more power we will have to overcome those who are still trying to define us and still trying to tell us what we can accomplish and what we cannot, where we belong and where we don't belong. We belong everywhere. That is why we were created, and we have a space everywhere. And that's where I will end. And I'm sorry if you hear all the thunder. If any of you live
I was wondering if they could hear my thunder.
Yeah, it's a lightning show out there.
Welcome to the summer.
Exactly.
And climate change and everything else. Okay, I see that Jean-Francis S is iPhone 61. Is nodding his head, so I want to give you a chance to weigh in on this as well. As I mentioned before, you're with the band. Actually, you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jean-Francis Vari. I'm born in Washington, D.C., but my parents are from Senegal and Cape Verde, West Africa. I do have a band called Sahel, which, yes, is a reference to the region of the Sahel from Ethiopia to Dakar, Senegal. But the reason that I chose that name is not only because of what it is today, but what it represents in African history. It was actually the superhighway of cultural dialogue before colonization for both Nilotic and Bantu cultures. So from the Congo to Ethiopia to West Africa, the Sahel was where we traded knowledge. So that was the basis of it. I also have an organization called Black Atlantic, which is brand new, burgeoning, but all of my Pan-Africanist activities are centered under it. I'd like to thank everyone for having me on this. I'd like to thank Dira also for giving the name. And I'd also like to say hello to Gary, who I haven't seen in a long time. My good friend Gary. Yes, yes, indeed. So to get to the point, I'd like to, I always like to start with the bitter medicine before the more pleasant stuff. So within our differences, obviously, a lot of people have already mentioned it, our colonial cultures and languages are among the things that differentiate us. And to the point of what was said about the Latin diaspora, one of the biggest differences is between the Anglophone, English-speaking cultures of the diaspora, and then the ones that are more Latin, being Portuguese, Spanish, and French-speaking, where that same dynamic that was spoken of by, I believe, Edna, happens, where the racism is more hidden. And there's a book which really describes that phenomenon as lusotropicalism or lusotropicalismo. And that is basically the description of that hidden racism, where they describe a racial utopia, as they did in Brazil and as they did in a lot of Latin America, which, when there really isn't one, and they're hiding the real discrepancies, the real abuse, the real stratification. Again, between Latin cultures and Anglophone, it's something that's very distinct. In Anglophone cultures, that's why in the United States you have the one drop rule. That's why you have Jim Crow, which was so stringently honest in its racism. And that comes from a lot of, historical and political aspects, the Puritanism of the Anglos that came to the Americas made it so that any form of mixing was completely out of the question. So therefore, you have a form of oppression that's, I don't want to compare in their quality, but it's a lot more in your face as opposed to within Latin America. And I don't know if some are aware of this, but even mixed race cultures, there was an aspect of it within Latin cultures, within the Portuguese, that was deliberate. São Tomé was the very first place that a mixed culture was encouraged, if not doctrinized, so that it could be a buffer between the overwhelming slave majority and the very few masters on the top. And that's before the slavery was really encultured in the Americas. So, and among the other differences, as was mentioned within Europe, I see it too. I have a lot of family within Europe, France, Spain. I travel there a lot, and yes, there are differences in the way racism is expressed even there. Now, when it comes to our commonalities, which is more of my preference and my strong suit, I'm a musician. I see the diaspora through the music first. So part of what I do is to trace the diaspora through its rhythmic claves. We have to remember that our cultures, before coming to the Americas, were overwhelmingly, not completely, but overwhelmingly oral. And most of our knowledge was passed through oral culture and music. And that commonality within the diaspora is something that has not died. And there's a lot of hidden knowledge and hidden history even within the music. So to be more granular about it, cultures like the Yoruba, the Manding, the Bakongo, and all of those had distinct claves and had distinct polyrhythmic combinations that you can recognize from Brazil all the way to New York. African-American music, Afro-Caribbean music, and through that, you also find the remnants and the syncretization of our cultures within that. And within mainstream, I'm sorry, somebody has something?
No, you're good.
Okay. So, and within that, there are commonalities that still, in my point of view, need to be exposed, because when it comes to our unity and to the image of Pan-Africanism in and of itself, there's knowledge within the music, there's knowledges within the rhythms that carries historical knowledge, that carries tribal knowledge, that carries medicine, that carries all of those aspects that are oral culture in our music. And you can even distinguish the tribes, for instance, in Salvador Bahia, in Cuba, from Havana to Santiago, Haiti, obviously. You can actually distinguish our history and our tribes and how we were syncretized through those claves. So that's one of the most positive things, because it's also a very healing aspect that we share regardless of our colonial languages. That's one of the things that I promote the most. And another thing is macro linguistics. Yes, we speak different European languages, but within our linguistic expressions, we find commonalities such as double expressions. Whether you're talking about hot pepper in Congo, pili pili, to I hate to use this example, but in the United States, when we say popo and we mean the police, that tendency to use those doublings of words is just a small example of how African people have bent European languages to our own macro aesthetics. So within that, you can see so much of our culture, which has not really been exposed enough yet, and to show us our commonalities. Another one of those commonalities, which is very subtle, is even the role of women within African cultures, be they Anglophone, Latino, or otherwise. You'll see that women have a role. Yes, misogynation and sexism exists everywhere, but women within most African cultures have a more prominent, more leadership role. In the United States, yes. So one of the things I told Richard is that in the United States, African Americans have the most unique experience in the diaspora. for sure. One of the reasons why is because most colonies were extraction colonies, but colonies like the United States, South Africa, Australia were settler colonies. And that creates a different culture in and of itself and a different kind of oppression. So you have that in the United States, and also the fact that in the United States, 13%, 10% versus the majority of whites is also another form of oppression that eliminated the drum. So that communication was dampened in the United States, but it also created a need for much more creativity, as a matter of fact, and for much more consciousness, which is why I tend to say, and a lot of people would agree, that the United States is, for lack of better terms, metaphorically, African Americans are the consciousness of the diaspora, while within the rest of the diaspora, the spiritual aspects and the direct cultural aspects to our folklore were more maintained. And that combination is what we need most of, because if we can get that more nationalism sense of being of the United States mixed with that, I believe it's something that would benefit us the most. And to expound on that point, Marcus Garvey came to Harlem for that reason, because he knew he would get more traction from a consciousness point of view in the United States. Kwame Nkrumah and all the leaders of the African liberation movements all pointed towards Harlem for that very same reason. So that's another commonality that we've had that is not really that common today. I believe that since the 60s, there's been a very, very deliberate move to dampen counterculture and this type of knowledge. But it's the kind of thing that I try to teach my daughter and I try to teach younger generations, because when we can see our commonalities more freely in that fashion, it makes it a lot easier to see how we can unify in order to defend ourselves.
Here. Let me stop you here. I want to also let people know that the reason that I asked the question about we got into the discussion of extraction colonies versus settler colonies is because when I was talking with somebody from the UN about this, and I asked her for her own take on what we Black people around the world have in common and what they don't. One of the first things she said was that she found that African Americans were the proudest of their countries, more so than than people who would live elsewhere. And Jean-Francis has just outlined one of the reasons for that. You got a question here. Would you consider Brazil a settler colony or an extraction colony? But I'll go. But let me just finish that thought, and that is that one of the other things she said about the differences and similarities is that in hairstyles, now that cornrows and buns and coils, dreadlocks, braids are so popular, you can no longer tell where somebody is from just by looking at them. So I'm gonna, you guys, let's wrap this up, and then we're going to go on to our NABJ candidates to get their thoughts on this.
I've already passed my time. I feel like I'm talking without watching the time limit.
Okay, all right. Well, that's all right. We'll go on to now. We want to ask, since we have three candidates for president of this, three candidates for president of NABJ with us, I would like to ask them how they think NABJ fits into this whole picture we've just heard of what it's like for Black people around the world, including journalists. So who wants to go first of the three candidates?
I'll go first if that's okay with you.
Yes, please.
Look,
go ahead.
And thank you to some of the people in the room, because when I stepped into this role as president, we began to look at what it looked like to have a real Pan-African exchange, a cultural exchange. And that Pan-African cultural exchange culmination was to have some journalists from Africa actually come to NABJ and experience not only NABJ, but get the opportunity to understand journalism here. And likewise, going back to the other direction. One of the things that we really knew that as we began that process is that at the time that we started, that it was a whole lot easier to get them here than to get us there. And so the thought was during this convention coming up soon that we'd have some people from Sierra Leone actually join us. And then I got an email this week of people who went through that whole process with the State Department. I'm going to read real quickly, if you don't mind, on behalf of Sierra Leone Broadcast Association. However, it says here, we are deeply disappointed. They wanted to be here with us. We're deeply disappointed and regret to inform you that despite our members' diligent efforts, including filing completed visa applications and paying the required fees, the U.S. Embassy in Freetown has not yet scheduled interview dates. Now, this delay stems from the current U.S. visa restrictions this year, affecting a number of countries, including Sierra Leone, making it highly unlikely that we will secure visas for this conference. They'll still appear. We understood there's a possibility they wouldn't be able to make it, and so we worked on what it looks like to have them here virtually. But that goes back to something we heard Edna say that I thought was so impressive. She said, the door is formally open, but it's really close. So when we go into areas like, you can see the impact of the NABJ and the struggles that have been made over the years. We go into areas like Jackson, Mississippi, and we see the number of Black people who are engaged in journalism and leading journalism and making sure that areas are covered. We still understand that even in a situation like this, we have a country that is not even here. They're being greatly impacted by policy and procedure that's set in place that largely stems from colonization and the way people look at us and the way people begin to inject race and seeing Black as less and other as much better. And so that's the struggle that we still have to fight, and we still have to fight that vehemently. In addition to that, it is also appealing to understand that when I hear people like our gentleman who spoke to us virtually earlier today, we heard that recorded, and I actually went and sat and I listened to some of that when you sent that out to us. It's encouraging. He talked about that hunger, and he talked about that hard work, and he talked about wanting to be engaged and not wanting to be shut out, that we still see people who are just doing that. They don't want to be shut out. And when we work with young journalists, we're seeing that the access and the availability has changed greatly. About 4 years ago, we had a young journalist come in, and I was working on a training program. And this was a young student journalist who came in, and one of the guys went up to him and said, you know, your voice is phenomenal, but you got to change your hair. You got to change up. You got to flip. And I thought, you know what? That's a better opportunity to get a job, but we need to see things differently. Just last year, I had an opportunity to work with a young man who came in with me. He says, you know, hey, I just need to shoot this and I want you to come out with me. And I said, no, that's not a problem. Let's go. He had cornrows. This young man went out there and killed it. And part of me wanted to say to him, you know, you got a better opportunity of landing a job without those cornrows. Right now, and he commented, me and he went back and forth just today. He's on his first job, and he's killing it. He's getting awards. And guess what? The cornrows are still in place. So we can authentically show up as ourselves. But that struggle, that fight, that's the thing that has to continue no matter where you are, because of the way that the world has imposed their view of who we are. And it's almost feels like a real ownership type bend to it. Like, we can tell you who you are. We can tell you how far you can go. We can tell you what the limitations are. And yet we see people every day fighting to break that. And we're supporting that when and where we can.
All right. Thank you, Ken. Who's next? Either Aaron or Dion?
Yeah, I can go ahead, Richard. And thank you so much for including me to be here today, because this has been a fascinating and really inspiring and exciting conversation. I come to this conversation really, I was energized to think more deeply about the role of Black journalists in particular in our relationship with the continent, our relationship with Black journalists on the continent, and really our relationship as Black journalists in the diaspora. A couple of years ago, when I launched my column at the 19th, The Amendment, the very first column that I wrote was actually about the trip that I went on with Vice President Harris, her very first trip to the continent. She was in Ghana, Tanzania, and Zambia. And that trip really opened my eyes to the possibility of narrative change, really, for us at this moment in our collective histories on both sides of the ocean. The column that I wrote was, really about the Kamala Harris that I saw in Africa. Edna, I really appreciated your comments about just kind of the leadership of Black women and what that means globally. Got to see not only the vice president on the world stage and how she was regarded as a world leader, something that frankly was very different than the treatment that she received in her time as the second most powerful person in the country, arguably the world, in her tenure as vice president, thinking about what that meant. When the vice president of Brazil was elected, Vice President Harris reached out to her, like, we understand the importance of Black women's leadership globally and what that means and the lessons that holds for us. But the other thing that really stuck out, Edna, from what you said, was just the value of our institutions as a firewall for our people. Like, this is our role as NABJ. This is why I'm running for president. Like, our people are coming under attack. It's up to us to celebrate us, to defend us, and really this is a reminder that we have what we need to do this work together. What does it mean to create a global consciousness? I just want to give a shout out to all of the folks in NABJ who have really have been thinking about and working towards strengthening the relationship that we have with our other Black journalists across the diaspora. This is something that we've been doing throughout our 50-year history, and we have to continue. We have to strengthen it now, because what we do know is that America does lead, for better or for worse. And the relationship between a free press and a healthy democracy is something that other countries are paying attention to. They're taking their cues from it. I mean, the rise of nativism around the world is something that countries are paying attention to. The attacks that we are seeing on marginalized communities around the world, that is something, that it really does. America is playing a role in how that is proliferating around the world. So I think that this is such an important conversation to have, but we need more conversations. We need more gatherings. NABJ needs to be at some of these conferences that were mentioned. We need to be part of this conversation and trying to figure out how we can shift the narrative in this moment. We have so many African nations right now that are in the midst of celebrating their liberation, the liberation that they fought so hard for from their colonizers right now. What does it mean to tell that story? We have a lens specifically that can look at this that is valuable. So, I'm thinking really, Jean Francis, what you said about, culture and how it connects us, like, we are the keepers of our culture as Black journalists. We are the ones that are telling that story. Black excellence is global. We know that. And I'm so excited about the role that NABJ can, and I think really must play headed into our next 50 years and just, having leadership that really understands that and is ready to see and capitalize on the value of that on both sides of the ocean feels very, very important to me. So thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate that. All right, Dion, you're on. Dion Ramon.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. And to the entire journalism's community, appreciate you all bringing us together for this very important conversation. Listen, I think it's tempting and really even it's inspiring, right, to talk about NABJ growing into Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America. I've actually traveled numerous times to Africa. My father moved to Ghana about 20 years ago, and I've been there a number of times since, as well as to South Africa, East and West, to North Africa as well. Traveled, spent a lot of time in Central and South America and the Caribbean. And that connection to other folks in the diaspora, right? Like, really finding that and learning about that is what pushed me to learn to speak French, Spanish, and Portuguese, so I could have real and authentic conversations with my brothers and sisters around the globe. I think that conversation, that global conversation, really matters. But when we talk about where does NABJ fit with this, we've got to be real. We need to fix home first, because right now NABJ just isn't working with anyone. This isn't a criticism. This is the sad truth. And I want to be clear, like, this isn't just my opinion or what I'm seeing from outside. Let me tell you a little bit about what I've been hearing, because I'm not running this campaign about hypotheticals. I've spoken with leaders of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, spoken with the Black Press, NMPA, with our LGBTQ colleagues, our Asian and Indigenous journalism partners, all these folks who should be our natural allies. Over and over, I hear the same thing. We'd love to work with NABJ, but we can't because of infighting, because of personality conflicts, because leadership is closed, not collaborative. And that fractured leadership, it's hurting all of us. We're missing out on revenue, on fellowship opportunities, on support for our members who are living at so many of these intersections, right? Our Afro-Latinos, our LGBTQ plus members, our HBCU students, our partners in the Black press who feel unseen and underappreciated. Meanwhile, they, and y'all know who I'm talking about when I talk about they are coming for us. Our communities, our journalism, our rights. our very ability to tell the truth and to tell our stories.
Dion. Let's get back
Yes.
to the topic here.
Was that?
Let's get back to the topic of globalism.
Oh yeah, but listen, brother, I'm bringing it home. I'm bringing it home to the topic at hand.
All right.
You're saying the question is like, where does NABJ fit with all this, right?
In this global context.
In this global consciousness. That's exactly my point. And so to
Okay.
fit in with this global consciousness, we've got to be with our brothers and sisters here. Again, that means our Afro-Latino brothers and sisters. That means our African brothers and sisters. That means all of the folks who are Black, representing the B in NABJ. Right? We need to be there and stand up, because NABJ isn't just standing up for Black journalists. We're standing up for Black people right now. Black people here and around the world are counting on us. And so if we want to see NABJ become something truly global, then we've got to first show up for that diaspora right here. That means embracing new partnerships, welcoming new ideas, and rebuilding trust with every community inside our tent. NABJ can't just belong to some of us. It's got to serve all of us. And that's all of us around the globe. So my promise is to build bridges, not barriers, to open doors, not close them, and to ensure that NABJ is a force for all our members. Black journalists aren't a monolith, right? We're queer, we're trans, we're Afro-Latino, we're immigrants. We speak Spanish, French, Portuguese, Haitian Creole, Yoruba, right? All of those things. And so as the world of journalism is evolving, so must NABJ. And so that's what I'm coming back to when I talk about, what must NABJ do to expand globally, to reach all of our brothers and sisters around the world. We've got to make sure that we're in a place where we're starting with a solid foundation with the folks from the diaspora who are here. NABJ doesn't just belong to some of us, it belongs to all of us. And that's my vision. That's what I wanted to talk about today. So I appreciate you letting me talk on that, Richard, and I appreciate you having me.
Okay, thank you, Dee. I appreciate that. Okay, now we have so many other people with interesting ideas and perspectives in the room. So I just want to open up. Who wants to weigh in among those who haven't said anything yet? Oh my goodness, it's all been said? Wow.
This is Cecily Counts.
Okay, yes.
I'd just like to point out that Trans Africa, the African American Foreign Policy Lobby, dealt with almost all the issues that have been mentioned today and wrote about them from the perspective that U.S. foreign policy had a disproportionately negative impact on the people of the Caribbean coast in Central America. This was during the Reagan years with the so-called war against the Contras. The peoples of the Pacific, who were victims of U.S. nuclear testing in what was often claimed to be uninhabited islands. Those islands were not uninhabited, but they were inhabited by Black people. And the situation of Black people in Europe was another topic that we covered, in addition to the various challenges in Africa that were exacerbated, and in the Caribbean, for example, Haiti, by discriminatory U.S. foreign and domestic policies. The whole question of immigration was critical, a part of Trans Africa's work. We pointed out the discrepancy in the treatment of Soviet, at that time, refugees and Haitian refugees. And I would just like to conclude by saying U.S. foreign policy is even worse. We thought Reagan was the worst president imaginable, and now we see that he was not. And I'm just pleased to see that Vanuatu won its case before the International Court of Justice, talking about the disproportionate impact on people in islands, but Vanuatu is a Black Pacific island, by climate change. And that, the small island countries are the victims of climate change. They're not the cause of climate change. So we tried, and that message still needs to be delivered. U.S. foreign policy exacerbates every problem that our communities have around the world.
What should be done about it?
Well, the point was that we need.
I want to address that to journalists in terms of.
Okay, I would just like to say that Trans Africa's perspective was that we needed to mobilize the African American community to try and change U.S. foreign policy. That is a very difficult and long-term.
But where do journalists fit into that?
Well, the success that we had was largely due to journalists. I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that at that time, before the internet, before email, before cell phones, at a time when a fax was a brand new technology, the reports coming out of Southern Africa, the images of Southern Africa, the Black journalists who had managed through the fight for so-called affirmative action to place themselves in major media outlets, from the Wall Street Journal to the Washington Post to CBS, ABC, NBC News, back then again, really before the proliferation of so many media choices. Black journalists made a profound difference.
All right, Dorothy Davis has her hand up.
I have a lot of different thoughts.
Well, tell us who you are first.
Okay, I'm Dorothy Davis. I'm president of Dorothy M. Davis Strategic Global Consulting and the Griffith J. Davis Photographs and Archives. I was born in Liberia as a result of my father and mother working for the Foreign Service in at the time that the independence movement in Africa was starting. My dad was the first roving editor for Ebony at the recommendation of Langston Hughes. And over the course of growing up, I got to know Arabelle Thompson, who was the international editor for Ebony at the time. And she has not really gotten the recognition she should have gotten along the way. And that is one of the things that I keep bringing up to NEBJ in terms of its international outreach that I do think is kind of weak, to be frank. I have, I feel that several things are going in my mind at once. I feel that the differences between us are that we've been siloed by the way the US government has portrayed us to the outside world and how they portrayed the outside world to us.
Who is us?
Us meaning the African Americans or just Americans in general. We had the Tarzan movies, things like that, that kind of portrayed how Africa was to us in the US. And then in terms of the US government, they portrayed us in not positive images along the way. What I want to bring up though mostly is that I work with the UN, and there is I don't know if anybody knows this, but anyway, there's a second international decade for people of African descent.
Yes,
there was a first
one
one.
of the things that prompted this discussion.
Right, and there was a first one from 2015 to 2024 that really didn't get any movement until midterm. And that's partially the UN's fault because they're not really good at promoting the things that they do. But the point
out
is
that we invited them to this discussion and they said they couldn't make it.
Yeah, well, the point is, who did you invite? Because there are a lot of people who would have loved
we went to the PR office and they gave us,
no,
people.
Come to me next time, okay?
Oh, okay.
Just come
All right.
to me. Don't go that way, okay? Because there are a lot of people out here who would talk a lot about this. The good news is, well, let me give you a sample. When George Floyd was killed and we were all under lockdown and the world saw what the US is like, it inspired, I don't know if that's the right word, but the Africa Ambassador Group connected to the Human Rights Council demanded that the Human Rights Council do a study on systemic racism, covering both slavery, not both, but slavery, colonialism, genocide, apartheid, and so forth and so on. Trump was in power at the time and tried to squash it. He could not. And so the UN was obliged to do that. So they did a report on systemic racism. I think they included 20 countries. And the report was issued July 2021 with recommendations. The thing about the UN is they can give you recommendations, but it's really up to each country to take it on and move forward. Those recommendations are still out there. There was not that much coverage, if any, about that report and the content.
Okay, I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay, so there is a permanent forum for people of African descent that came out of that report. There are 20 people on that in that forum. One of them is Justin Hansford from Howard, Professor Justin Hansford. He is the U.S. representative. There is all kinds of reports that the UN has done on racism in the U.S. that nobody has picked up over here. So,
well, Doris, let me just tell you, the experience we just had with trying to get the UN to attend this forum is instructive. They're not very good at PR.
I agree.
Right.
I agree. No, I just said that.
Right.
They
So,
are.
you know,
They're terrible.
let's put the blame where it belongs, okay? All right, I'm going to have to cut you off.
Okay.
Bill Lewis.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Hi, Richard. Thanks for having this discussion. My name is Phil Lewis, president of the WABJ. Currently trying to pull together some research on past presidents. If anybody can help me with that, by the way, that's separate, something separate. But yeah, I think this is a really interesting conversation. One thing that I wanted to point out was something that Janita Poe pulled up in kind of the chat a little bit early, and I was like, that's a good point. And she's saying that she hopes that we can talk about our younger generation's often divided conversations on social media about the diaspora. And I think that that's a good point, especially in the wake of Essence Fest, right? That just passed, and I don't know if people are online, but there was a lot of conversation about Essence Fest and its purported alleged takeover of so-called Africans, right? That took over this program. So I think what's interesting to me is that it seems like we have access to more information than ever before, but we're reading less, right? And people they feel less connected to the history of certain things. And I think that there's levels to it, because I've met people in person who take what they see on social media as fact, as reality. And there are people who are saying, like, who say things like the transatlantic slave trade was a myth, right? Like these are real people, right? Who are consuming a lot of this information from YouTube and social media and all these different places. And it's to the point where I don't think that we can say, like, this is just something that's happening on social media. So I guess to round that up, my question or just comment is really like, what do people think is what should we do to sort of reach people who are propagandized by social media in this way? Because it's a growing number of people that I don't think that we can ignore anymore. Thanks.
Richard?
Yes, yeah. Let me just say that also, this is a big problem in Africa, and they have set up structures to combat misinformation and social media all around the continent. So that's one way they're dealing with it. Okay, I think Cynthia was okay. Cynthia, and then Ken.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good.
Okay, Cynthia, go ahead.
Okay. Good to be here. I'm American. My family is from Belize. I was born in New York. I left the States 31 years ago, and I've been in Portugal for the past 13 years. And what I'm noticing now happening very recently, certainly here in Portugal, is it's ironic. We have this backlash against immigration, and most of these immigrants, this is a legacy of colonialism. I mean, they are former, people who are coming here. Now in Portugal, the big question now is, who is Portuguese? And on June 10th every year is Dia de Portugal. It's the Dia of Camões. It's all, Portuguese Day of Pride. And there was a writer who spoke at the official presentation who said, there's no one here has pure blood. And I mean, it's a wonderful speech, where she said, we're all descendants of slaves and slave masters, which is true. I can see it in Portugal. But now you have, in the past few years, an extreme right party, Chega, which is now the #2 party. That happened in the March national election. And we've got, two immigration reform bills, one which the president is considering and sent to the Constitutional Court, because it does things like say Brazilians and all members of Portuguese-speaking countries can no longer just come here and then apply for visas. That was the situation before. This calls for you, having a visa and making it more difficult, really, to be legal and to become a citizen. And the second bill will come up in September, and that lengthens the time that people have to be here from 5 to 10 years for most people, into 5 to 7 to apply for citizenship. The small amount of time is for people in former Portuguese colonies. And it also says that you can have your citizenship taken away if you are convicted of heinous crimes.
What is the impact of all this on people of color, Black people
well, the Black people here are with the Brazilians and the Cabo Verdeans and the people from former colonies, and so the impact would be it's just going to be harder to be here in Portugal legally. That's it. And that's,
Right.
Portugal is like many European countries, it's suffering demographics. It's a very old population. And a couple of years ago, it lost population, actually. It went from 10.3 million to 10 million. And now it's sort of regained that, but it's largely through immigrants and immigrants having children, basically.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure that the immigration policies of the United States aren't helping any toward getting.
I'm hearing things like people talking about whites, and I'm thinking, I just didn't think people identified in that very American or South African way before, So yes, it's definitely that, that poison, from the US that's coming here. But the other thing I wanted to point out is that many Americans, well, many people are moving to Portugal and have been, say, for the past 7 years. They had been encouraging it, and now they're sort of like, oh, we don't have any houses for people, everything's more expensive, and so on and so on. And some Black Americans are moving here. And the questions that people have are so American, like, tell me where I can live in Lisbon. Where are the Black neighborhoods? Okay, well, that's not the way it works here in Portugal, or it's not the way it works in Europe. We don't have like racially segregated neighborhoods. I mean, you'll find in Lisbon areas where a lot of Black people live. Again, there'll be people who come from former colonies and they're living poor. They're living really poor. So we're asking questions that schools, Americans want to send their kids to international schools, private schools. That's best. Of course, I understand that, because in the States, if you're not living in an area that has money, then you're going to have poor schooling. That's not the case here. And also, I try to point out to people that, what is your child's life going to be when they become an adult? If you want them to become integrated, learn Portuguese, learn the custom, send them to local schools. That's what I did with my son, who was 9 when we moved here and is 22 now.
Okay.
So that's all I sort of wanted to point out. It's so hard, I think. It's hard to imagine another culture. It just is, because we just make assumptions based on what we know. That's absolutely normal, but it's very different here.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia.
You're welcome.
Yes, Ken Cooper.
Thanks, Richard. I want to start by saying that I'm a bit skeptical of saying what Black African descended people around the world have in common is the way we're mistreated by other people. It strikes me as relativistic, and it sort of defines our commonality by what other people do to us. I rather think of it more in terms of cultural terms, cultural remnants and shared cultural aspects. Richard's seen this. I think he posted the link where I was the Washington Post correspondent in India back in the 90s, and I wrote a piece about remnant populations of African people in India, Pakistan and Sri Lanka who'd been brought there as slaves. Not so much for agricultural purposes. Many of them came as soldiers, as palace guards and the like. And the ones I interviewed didn't know a whole heck of a lot about their African ancestry. The ones in India, though, it's been shown were from the Swahili region, speaking regions of East Africa. The ones in Sri Lanka came from Portuguese speaking of Southeast Africa, probably Mozambique. But there are things that they have retained are things like body language. In India, I was in the upper floor of a building waiting on my translator to get ready to go with me and do interviews. And I looked out the window, and across an open field, I saw a dark-skinned teenager or young man walking. And from the distance, I couldn't tell from the face whether they were Indian or Black or African descended. But from the way he was walking, I knew he was Black. There was something about it was like a young man in this state with a certain bop down the street. He had that. And that population in India, who are known as the Siddhis, Siddis, and you got to pronounce both Ds and say it right, retain African dance moves. I have a videotape, which is in an Indian format. I haven't been able to translate yet, but I watched some of it. And when I was in India, and it's very athletic-like, and it was men dancing only. And I talked to a museum director, African-American museum director here, and he thought it sounded comparable to capoeira from Brazil. And when he said that, I said, yeah, it's sort of like that. The other thing, and this goes a little bit beyond India to some of my other experiences in places like the Caribbean and talking to linguists, Black linguists, and reading about Ebonics, you know, if you move up a notch of abstraction from, you know, we have these creoles that combine African language with, you know, different European languages. If the African part of each of these languages, Haitian Creoles, Cape Verdean Criollo, Jamaican Patois, Bajan from Barbados, their African part, they have certain similarities about the sensibilities about time, how verbs are used or not used. For example, the tendency to use verbs, and even in Ebonics, when people are talking about something in the past, but the verbs are in the present. And that actually reflects, you know, a fairly widespread African sensibility about time, where the ancestors are still here in the present. And there's a word for that, you know. It's a sort of their sense of the world gets expressed, you know, when somebody in the States, you know, might here in the United States, an African American might say, I went to my mama's house, and she say, so she went there in the past, but she's talking in the present, that kind of thing. So I would rather think and about commonalities as being cultural. Food waste play a part in that. I was reading recently that some people think that fried chicken was invented in Africa, so we African Americans go by that honestly, if that's true.
Well, you know, you make a good point, because John Francis and I were talking about two other things, which are fashion and food, which are commonalities, cultural commonalities across the diaspora. Is that, did I say that right, John Francis?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. We have tendencies within our fashion, from accessories to our clothing, to the fact that we lack contrasting colors, maybe more than most cultures in the world. And you can find that again in all of sub-Saharan Africa, from Senegal all the way to South Africa to the Cape. And in our foods, oh my God, we could go on forever. The same thing I said about the clave, and tracing our cultures through the rhythms, through our body movements. You can also trace it in our foods. You can see from gumbo in Louisiana Okra in Senegal is called gombo. That's its name. And you can find the same type of similarities all over the diaspora. In Brazil, they eat a food called manisoba, which is 100% like Nigerian and Congolese manioc leaves crushed. And I could go on and on with the way that we use dried fish for seasoning, which is another thing I really find in common with Southern Asia, but that's another story. But bottom line is all of these similarities that are there that we take for granted. I'm agreeing with Mr. Cooper. I think that in order to fight our differences, we have to actually focus on the commonalities that have been obscured, and they were obscured on purpose. This was done on purpose, the same way I was talking about San Tome and the creation of a mixed race class. A lot of these things were done on purpose. These mentalities, the erasure of our thought, the erasure of the common things that you can really see, like again, Mr. Cooper described, even in our movements. They're there, our cultures are there, claves are there, which are the communication of our ancestors and the similarities that we have on a macro level. No, we are not a monolith. That's a fact, but we are a continent. So not only did we have something in common as cultures of the sub-Saharan portion of that continent, but now we have these commonalities that are not negative ones of the oppression, but our cultures were by necessity forced to syncretize in the Americas. And that in and of itself has given us way more commonalities than the mainstream culture would want us to know. And I think that that is the only way to combat those commonalities that are really negative. That's the reason why, part of the reason why the youth run from African history as a whole is because of the focus on the pain that we have gone through. And I'm a futurist, personally, Afrofuturism. And the reason I value it so much is because it allows us, through our own common ancestry and heritage, to imagine our future without that pain, without that degradation, without that dehumanization.
Thank you. I see Dion Rabowen has his hand up as well.
Yeah, I agree with and love everything mon frère Jean-Francis said. I think though it's both, right?
Yes,
when I've
yes.
traveled and I speak with Black folks, whether it be in Brazil or Colombia or in the Caribbean or in Africa on the continent, I always find some folks who are, just welcoming, like my brother, they see, like I apparently just look American, right? And they can just kind of spot me and like, hey, my brother, what are you doing? Come over here. And what I think sort of separates us is I think he hit the nail on the head, right? There have been these efforts to kind of put us in boxes. And one of the strongest pieces to that is language, right? That we don't speak the common language of our brothers and sisters in Latin America or in the Caribbean or West Africa, or we don't speak the common language of folks, the Portuguese speaking folks like those in Brazil. But when we come together, even when there are those language barriers, there are just all those things. And I think it comes from both the way that, colonialism has affected and impacted us historically, and also the way that we fought back against and rose against colonialism. And the way that a lot of those same things within our food, within our culture, our dance, are similar across global cultures, come from uprisings against colonialism, uprisings against slavery, uprisings against, the general mistreatment of our people. And some of those same things that come from the food, because there is a shared common history, even though it's very different, right? And so what I think is beautiful about Black culture globally, and I've been fortunate enough and blessed enough to be able to travel and be able to have lots of conversations with folks, is just the way that there is a spirit of brotherhood everywhere you go. When Black folks see you, they see you and they want to talk with you. They want to learn more about where you're from, and they want to learn more about what your culture is like. And they want to know, hey, are these things I see on TV, is that the truth, or am I just, seeing things? And I've loved having so many of those conversations. And I think, again, one of the best things I've been able to do is just learn to speak some of those other languages so you can have those authentic conversations with not just the folks who are at the hotel lobby and those folks who are, trying to sell you something, or who are employed in tourism services, but real people who are just out on the street working every day trying to live their lives. And I think that language piece has been so important and why I've been able to have so much rewarding travel and conversations, because a lot of times when you travel to a different country, those folks are intimidated. They see you and they think, oh, well, this person's not gonna be able to speak to me. I'm not gonna speak to them. So I'll just, not engage. And when you can break down those barriers, you just can have incredible conversations. And so that shared culture just comes to light. So I just wanted to share that. That's my thought.
Thank you, Dion. I see that Clark Kent's phone. I don't know who Clark Kent's phone belongs to, but
it is me. It's Delano. I'm Delano Massey. I'm the managing editor of Axios, Axios Local. I heard a lot. Thank you,
Clark
Richard.
Kent's phone.
Yeah, I'm Clark Kent. So I am, I'm inspired by a lot of the conversations, and I'm a journalist, but I'm also somebody that is engaged with people in other facets. I'm also somebody that just likes workflow. I think that community is one of the things that's really important here. And when it comes to the diaspora, just being able to sort of learn and unlearn some of the things that we were taught and the things that were told to us by media at large, not talking about journalism, but just the media and the access that they have to even programming. But I'm heartened also because I think that for NABJ, and I think that that was the original question, like, what is the opportunity that exists? And I think about the fact that Microsoft and Google have pumped billions of dollars, I think $2 billion between the two of them, to improve the infrastructure, especially in East Africa. One of my business partners, associates, we have a cybersecurity company that nearly tanked in the pandemic, but we found opportunity in Africa, just being able to educate people about the threat of cybersecurity, and also knowing that that was only going to increase over time. And I think the same holds true for having relationships with not just them, but like the World Conference of Mayors. They were here in Atlanta last year, and among the things that they were talking about is how they can firmly build out this infrastructure. Like the current political climate and the things that people are trying to do as we rediscover our connections to Africa, and even journalists having conversations about what it means to have dual citizenship here, but also on the continent. These are very real threats, and these are things that people need to know, but they also need to have access to information and educate themselves about the things that are happening on the continent. And I think before Junior Bridgman had died, one of the last initiatives and one of the things that's still ongoing is the NBA Developmental League. And at some point, they believe that the NBA can blossom over there as it is blossoming over here. And they've created a pipeline specifically for talent because they realized they didn't have access to hoops. They didn't have, the colleges and the institutions and the camps that they needed. And now we're starting to see the first influx of those players, only to have ICE crackdowns to threaten that. And I just wonder where NABJ is in extending that conversation to the things that are happening and educating people here about what is actually happening there. And to make sure that there's like a direct, clearly a line of communication that exists, because some of it is just that like we don't know, and we don't know what we don't know. And then also the people who are here, one of my friends is from Cameroon, and he's an ambassador and was an ambassador in DC, and that's one of the things that he's done. He's taken the mayor to Atlanta and a bunch of other city leaders over there, just to make sure that we can have that conversation and the dialogue so that they can see beyond what the media has portrayed, and so that we have a better understanding of ourselves. And so I think, as NABJ, one thing that Dion had said, I think is true, the B is Black, and that's the same approach that Spill has taken. Spill basically was like, we can't compete with Blue Sky, we can't compete with Twitter, but we're Black everywhere. And so they're expanding their model, and their audience engagement is now so I think that there's just like an opportunity for us to try to figure out how to do that, and NABJ can serve as the top of that funnel.
Okay, thank you. Before we only have about 10 minutes left, but before we do that, I want to, where's Joe Gray? Madison J. Gray, there you go. Okay. We want to raise a toast to Joe. He's now the new executive editor of the New York Amsterdam News, and he's been around for a while, and he deserves his props. And so let's give him a toast. Hear, hear. Wish you well.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, say a few words about what you plan to do with it.
I kind of lost you there, Richard.
Oh, I said say a few words, if you would, about what your plans are for the Amsterdam News.
Okay, well,
a few words.
Just a few words. Well, I really want to see there's been a lot of growth at the Amsterdam News over the last couple of years, and I want to continue that.
I really wanted to expand the digital presence and the social media presence, bringing a lot of voices. We are in times where we really are going to need our Black media, where we're going to have to bring in a lot of different types of innovations for it. And I want the AM News to be a leading voice in that. And of course, I invite everybody's feedback and ideas and assistance too. There's a lot I'm going to have to do, but I know that the staff is with me, and I'm glad to be a part of them and partnering with them on and continuing the AM News legacy. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Here, here. All right. Okay, we'll have last two. We have Bob Reed and we have Josie Gonzalez. So Bob.
Yes, thank you. I'll try to be brief. In 20 years ago or so, I was in let's see where I was in. I think I was in Kenya. I was in a lot of different places. I'm not sure which. And I was talking to a member of parliament and suggesting that African Americans could help the governments there with some of their projects and to be a resource for them. And I found that he had a very low opinion of the capabilities of African Americans, driven primarily through, media stereotypes about African Americans through music, movies, etc. And, we're 20 years on, and I just wonder from the experts on this panel whether there still exists media-driven stereotypes about African Americans in different places in Africa and among Blacks in different places around the world. Because, just as Blacks have these stereotypes about African American Blacks have these different stereotypes based on lack of history and education and media stereotypes. I just wonder if the same still exists, particularly now exacerbated by social media craziness, and what your views on that are in terms of how Blacks around the world view African Americans at a base level.
Well, let me just say now that Zadi Zoku could not be with us. He's from the Ivory Coast, and he did and now he's living in the United States and became a citizen. Anyway, he did a film on what African Americans think about Africans and what Africans who live in the United States think about African Americans. And he was on a previous roundtable a few years ago, and the basic conclusion was that each group is influenced heavily by the stereotypes that white people basically have said about the other group. That African Americans are lazy and on welfare, blah blah blah, and Africans are all living in the bush. So he has very graciously sent a clip of his piece, and I'm going to put the link in the chat, and we can all look at what he's come up with. So that's one answer. I don't think yeah, that's one answer. Let me go to who was the other person who had a hand up? I've forgotten who that was. We have Darth.
Hey, I've been trying to speak for a while. I've had my hand up. It's Janita.
Oh, Janita. Yeah, okay. It was Janita. Okay, go ahead, Janita.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you, Richard, for just convening this discussion. This is so important. I'm Janita Poe in Atlanta, veteran journalist, AJC, Chicago Tribune, and other news organizations, and more recently, PhD in global communication. I lived 2 summers in suburban Paris with a multicultural family, and have studied in Mexico, Spain, Spanish and French have been the languages. I even studied Swiss Dutch one summer in the Netherlands. I'm not in Netherlands, what am I saying? In Switzerland, in Zurich. Okay. So to answer the question, like what can NABJ do to, if you will, strengthen ties between our diaspora? I want to say, first of all, we need to be very conscious of the fact that we are talking to each other, and we are kind of, like it or not, the elders now. we're like the boom. Not everybody here, I know, it's not a boomer type or the group that came right after. I think the millennials came right after, but we've been around. And what I'm hearing, and several people have touched on this, is social media. They're the young, our diaspora, the Black Brits, the Caribbean fam, Africa, and also I'm leaving out, I feel like I'm leaving out another, and the USA. We are now talking to each other and communicating with each other on social media in a way that we never had before. These young people are talking to each other, and some of them are clashing hard. I mean, I posted one comment, but I have seen it on, I monitor YouTube and I monitor Instagram because I'm working on a podcast and some things coming up as I transition to semi-retirement. And it's disturbing because when, I mean, and I won't talk about the details because you guys have touched on them and I can go on and on, but we are an organization positioned to communicate, to bring together these young people, to get away from all those echo chambers and all the scary stuff that happens when things are monetized and someone's driven to get a post out and promote it to make some money more than to really have healthy dialogue. Because there's a lot of unhealthy stuff that's happening intentionally just to draw the audiences and young people minds that can be molded or influenced by what they're hearing. So I just want to say thank you, Richard, for this. NABJ, can we continue to do this? I'm on the task force with the global task force, and I will be in Cleveland, and I will make sure I see Kiribati. She's our leader. I forget her name every time, but I saw her in there talking. She'll be on it. I'll be there with her, and we will be discussing this theme further. Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, Josie, I think you had your hand up, and that's what I was trying to think of earlier.
Good afternoon, everyone. Richard, thank you so much for inviting me. I was really interested in this topic, and I'll be quick, and hopefully we'll come back to this more. Gerald Horne talks about this so much extensively in all of his books, the de-internationalization of those who live in the diaspora with the continent. And so I think we have to begin to sort of unpack that piece. It's the historical grounding in post sort of the American Revolution, not post the Haitian Revolution, because there is a reaction to the Haitian Revolution that is that we're sort of living through consistently today. And so I think what we have in common is the tension with the distancing from freedom and liberation and how we understand freedom and liberation. And we have to ground that. And I think this sort of, we have to rest that in ways in which we accommodate to capitalism and ways in which we negotiate independence. These are sort of critical in our sort of addressing the current rise of fascism, the current rise of segregation. We're also participating in all of this. And so I think we need to have a broader conversation about liberation and freedom and independence, and centering discussions on a long history of genocide, a long history of cultural imperialism, a long history of annihilation. And so I'd love for us to come back and look at our sort of observation of Burkina Faso, and not just the current leader, but Sankara, look at ways in which sort of the Cuban Revolution played a role in the way in which we see ourselves in the diaspora. I'm Caribbean. I also live in America. I'm an immigrant. So I think these discussions around migration, immigration, claiming of land, and understanding liberation movement building, and the role of the journalists, and the role of media, legacy media corporations. 10 media companies own what we consume. 10 media organizations decide how we see each other. Yeah, we're Black everywhere, but 10 media organizations decide what that looks like.
To wrap it up.
So that's it. Just thank you.
Thank you. Is Mike Gotti still here? Mike? Okay, Mike.
Yes, I am.
Oh, I want to hear from you, Mike. Mike Gotti works on the national and international desk at the LA Times. But more important for our discussion is he's been everywhere around the world even had a website called Mike Tends to Travel. So, I don't know where the heck you've been recently, but I can see all these your posts from these various places on social media. So, what are your thoughts about this whole topic?
Well, I'm driving right now. I'm in Canada, driving to Toronto.
Oh my God! See it? See what I said?
Yeah, I just left Montreal, so I'm
301
to Toronto now. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So
Anyway,
you're not in a position to say anything right now.
Well, yes, I quickly, yes, I recently returned from my trip across Europe, Middle East and Europe. And I was in one of the things that impressed me the most in terms of that trip was connecting with Black folks in the different countries, but in particular, Brixton. I had been to London many, many, many times, but I had never been to Brixton. And I felt a real connection there with the folks there in Brixton. I spent a lot of hours talking to folks who own businesses there, Black folks, and it felt like a Black community there. It reminded me a little bit of Harlem, actually, but it's being gentrified as well, and that's one of the things people are saying. So there is definitely a connection there. There was a little bit of a language difference. I met family oddies that I have never met before, and they're British, and they had that English accent and so on. So when we talk about languages, there's a little bit of a difference there. I speak Spanish. I have relatives who are Spanish speakers already, also in Panama. And so, yes, there is that connection that I feel when I travel. I always try to connect with Black journalists if I can, but also the Black community there. And that was one thing special I felt about Brixton. I encourage everyone to go to Brixton if you get to London.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Is Curtiana still here? Curtiana Freelon? She is the head of the Global Affairs Task Force of NABJ. I wanted to give her an opportunity.
Yes,
Oh, good.
Yes, I am here.
All right. What are your observations now after hearing all this as head of the task force?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank everybody for their observations and commentary just on the Black experience and around the world. We actually have a new incoming president, Aurora, and so I'm actually going to be supporting her and really to helping to make some of these suggestions and ideas come true.
What's Aurora's background? What's her background?
She is actually an editor at Reuters.
Oh, okay.
Aurora Ellis.
Okay, good.
And so I did want to just give a little bit of, add just one little thing about Brazil, just because I have been living in Brazil for the last 10 years. It's been amazing to be there in these last 10 years because I've seen how just so much progress in terms of like Black consciousness, in terms of the rules and the laws that help Black people to kind of get to the Black middle class in Brazil. I've been there to experience it. And it's a very interesting time because I almost feel like Brazil really might be at a point where their approach to racial equality and inequality is probably more progressive than the US right now. And so I would just, and I bring up Brazil because they have the largest amount of people of Black descent outside of of Africa. And so I feel like if Black Brazilians aren't progressing, then all the diaspora isn't progressing. So really still also pay attention to what Trump is trying to do with trying to bring back Bolsonaro, who would basically do the same thing that Trump is doing to the US. If he were to be reelected or even to be allowed reelected, he would make everything regress in terms of the progress that Black people in Brazil have achieved in the last 10 years. So please put Brazil on your map to visit and to potentially even live in.
All right. Thank you very much.
May I just say, he has been a wonderful president, leader of our task force. I just wanted to
thank you so much.
share that. Thank you for your leadership.
Here.
Over several years taking on the job.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Who's speaking? I can't tell who's speaking.
Janita.
Oh, Janita. Okay. Thanks.
I'm on the task force.
Okay. Is Joe Ritchie still here? In Thailand? No, he must have gone off. Okay, Dorothy,
No,
your hand.
yeah,
All
I
right.
am still
Any
here.
observations you want to make, Joe?
Well, no, there's so much ground to cover, and I would tend to ramble. I'm just going to stand back and listen for a change.
All right. Well, if you have any thoughts that you want to
Whatever you
write down,
decide,
we
it's
can
fine.
put them in the
I gotta
chat.
get off because I'm on a roundtable. So you talk to Henry.
I just
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I'm the UN representative.
Who's speaking?
This is Dorothy. Dorothy?
Oh, Dorothy, yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that I'm the UN representative for the Congressional Black Caucus Institute Global African Diaspora Initiative. And it started in 27, CBCI received its UN ECOSOC consultative status in 2017 as a result of Congresswoman Barbara Lee kind of pushing it. And then they hired me in 2018 to build it up from scratch, which it has done. And we have participated in international conferences in Costa Rica and Cuba, where we've been keynote speakers and so forth. We are very much aligned to all the things that are going on at the UN relating to anything really, but particularly with the global African diaspora and the global diaspora movement. And so I bring this up because if you come to us, we can tell you where to go and what's going on. So that's it.
Excellent.
Oh,
okay.
there's a Caribbean CARICOM African Union Summit in Addis on September 7th. And that is where the Caribbean is starting to talk to Africa. One of the silver linings of Trump is that people are realizing, or countries are realizing, that they can't rely on the US. And so they're starting to create relationships and partnerships across each other. And also that the African Union's theme for 2025 is justice for Africa and people of African descent through reparations. And that's a huge step for the AU. So a lot is going on, and we need to connect.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, well, those who came in from Facebook, for whom we do not have email addresses, please put it in the chat room because we're going to print out the comments in the chat, and we want to be sure that everybody who is there can get a copy. And so we need to have everybody's email address. I see John Yearwood has got his hand up.
Hi, Richard. Hi, Richard. Great conversation and discussion as usual. Just want to say two things real quickly. One goes back to what can NABJ do? I think this creates a great opportunity for NABJ to even get more active in this international space. I mean, listening to and being part of the conversation with Matthew, I think makes it clear that if there's anything that NABJ and as I think Janita mentioned, that we are sort of the elder statesmen, if you will, to do to help the work that they're doing. I think NABJ could certainly look at doing that. Maybe the need for some kind of NABJ core or something like that for some of our members who are retired on sabbatical or what have you to help folks like Matthew really expand and do the work that they're doing in a much more elevated way. So that's one thing. The second thing, for those who want to connect more with the diaspora, there are two major events coming up in the next few months. One is the largest Afro-descendant event in Colombia, which is the Petronio Festival in August. And in December, there's a huge Afro-Brazilian festival happening in Salvador. So those and journalists are involved in both of those at different levels. In fact, in organizing them, Black journalists. So just want to pass those on. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you. And of course, you will see John and his interviewing skills on that video we had with Matthew Vari in Papua New Guinea. All right, I think that does it. Unless anybody has any other final things that they must say that everybody can hear. Okay. All right. Thank you all for coming. This has been wonderful and enlightening. And there will be a YouTube version of this in the next day or so. so you can spread it, spread it around, watch, see what you missed, hear what you thought you heard one more time. And as we're going to print out the chat room comments, and then everybody
Oh, okay.
we have email addresses.
That answered my question.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to print that out and circulate it to everybody for whom we have an email address. So thank you very much. See some of you in Cleveland at the NABJ convention, others of you at other places. And we'll see if we can make time to have another roundtable in August, because there's so much else going on with all these conventions. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for coming. And it's made my day. All right, adios.